This is the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific podcast, and today we are addressing again this issue of the impact that childhood sexual abuse has on our lives. My last interview that I did with Pastor Apanisi, talking about his abuse as a young boy around the age of 6, 7, 8, abused at the hands of men, then that led him down a attraction towards same sex. And so his story was powerful, just hearing him share, and I've had so much feedback. Thank you to the people who have written in, said how much it's helped you, and I know many of you have contacted Pastor yourself. And so we tell these stories because they bring freedom, they bring healing, they bring hope. And today I have another amazing guest with myself. Her name is Rose. Welcome, Rose.
Hi.
Rose was going to tell us a little bit about herself and then her story. But again, all the research and the data shows that when we are abused as children, it impacts us. It affects our mental health, our relationships, our ability to just cope in life. And so it's important that we talk about these things, because when we look at the issues in Fiji, we're all aware of the high HIV, teen pregnancy rates, drug abuse. These are just a result of deeper inner issues. It's the fruit of what happens, our destructive behavior that happens when we're hurting. And so being able to get healing is so, so, so important. And Rose is going to share a bit of her journey with us. So Rose, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're living right now.
Um, my name's Rosie Lutanaonga. I am from Ra. My mom's from Rotuma, and right now I live in Washington State in the USA. I was born in Lotoka, and we lived in Nandi around Vutolevu. That's like in Matavolivoli. I still do have family that live over there, and that's where I grew up as a kid before I moved to Suva. That's where my dad had orders to go to. He was in the military, and we lived in Nandi till I think 1998. I was so young at that time, and then we moved over to Suva around Nosori. We lived in Dilkusha, and my dad was in the military until he got out, and then he worked at the airports Fiji Limited. But yes, that's where I grew up, and I spent most of my childhood in Nandi and also in Suva.
And you're also a ACSL girl.
Yes, I went to high school in Andida Kambao School. I spent 5 years over there, the best 5 years of my life. That's where I learned a lot of traits in order to be an independent person, and that's what made me into what I am today.
Mm. And so, what led you to move to the States and leave the beautiful islands of Fiji?
So, funny story. Well, not exactly funny, but when I was in high school in Andida Kambao School, I heard about this. They had this office in Suva. I think it was in Turek. It was for to apply to get green card to the USA. Um, and during when we had this little weekend out, when we were allowed to go home for like 2 weeks or so, I used to go up there first. I used to take up my duffel bag, head up there, fill out the free forms. It was free for us, Form 6 and Form 7. I would fill out those forms and then head home. In 2011, that's when I received a letter in the mail saying that I got approved to get my green card. I told my mom about it, but I thought it was a joke. But then my mom said, "No, it's a real thing." So she started up my paperwork. I got everything done, and that's why I'm here today.
Wow, there you go. You enjoying it?
I am actually. I love what I do now. I get to travel a lot of places, and the biggest thing I like is I get to, meet a lot of people, diversity of culture here.
Yeah, no, it is so different. It's a lot cooler too. So,
Yes.
Rose, you were on a Zoom session that I did at the end of last year, actually, with different Fijian women across the states. You were listening
Mm-hmm.
to me talk, and at the end, you just made the comment, I need to share my story. And so that's how we've connected here today.
Mm-hmm.
And your story includes childhood sexual abuse, unfortunately, like so many other young Fijian children. Can you take us back to all those years ago where you were a young girl and just describe what happened to you as best as you can?
Yes. So while I lived in Matavolivoli, that's where, you know, that's where it all started. Um, so in a Fijian community, right, when you live with your neighbors, they become your family. So your parents entrust your neighbors to be there for you whenever they're gone. During that time, my dad, he had always deployed. Like I said, he was in the army. So when they would have like peacekeeping duties, to go to Lebanon and all these other countries, my mom was alone, even though she had her sister who lived like across, like, a few walks across. She was pretty much alone, and then her mom was there too. But like I said, all these neighbors, we would treat them as family, as to the point where, if you run out of sugar or if you run out of flour, you would go ask your next door neighbor, right? And most of the kids that I grew up with, we were around the same age. So there was this particular neighbor. We trusted this person as an uncle. And when I say we, I mean all the kids that I grew up with, particularly my niece. This is my first cousin's daughter. Daughters, right? We all trusted him. And it came to a point where he would invite us to come have lunch, watch movies, a lot of snacks. He had the best snacks in the neighborhood. So, we would all go hang out there. Kids, we love candy. So, who would say no to that? We would go hang out at his house. And then at one point, I remember this day. We were watching a show. He had put on this fighting show, I think, and then we were all in the living room. And then my niece came to pull my hand. She said, "Hey, come, let's go." And I was like, "Oh, where are we going?" I thought we were going outside to play. Because, we had trees and we love to climb. I know we're females, but we love to climb too. And she pulled my hand, but she didn't pull my hand into his son's room. His son is around our age. So she pulled my hand into his room, this uncle. We call him Uncle Jim. And then we went into his room, and she goes straight to him, and like she sits on top of this man. And I'm just like looking at them, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I guess that's normal. So she sits on him, and she rides him like a cowboy, like how you would ride on a horse. And I look at that and I get scared. So I walk outside the door, and she comes out and she pulls me back. She's like, come, he's got like candy for us. I don't know if you still have this in Fiji, but it's called violet. I forgot the name of the chocolate. It's purple. Yeah, violet crumble, I think that's what it was.
Mhm.
Yes. And he would, like, when she pulled me again to go to the room, he had this candy bar in his hand, and he was like, "Here," but he was still laying down on the floor flat. "Here, but you have to come and sit here first before I give this to you." So, being the little naive kid that I was, I went and I joined my niece. We were sitting on this man, and he had the sulu on, and then she was like, "Just rock back and forth. Just rock back and forth." So that's what we were doing, rocking back and forth on this man. And all he said was, "Yeah, just like that, just like that." And out of nowhere, I just got scared, so I stood up and I ran out. I ran out to my house. Beside my house there was a tree. I don't remember what tree it was, but there was a tree, and I started climbing all the way up to the branches, and I sat in there and I was crying. I was just crying, and then I could hear his voice and my niece's voice. They were calling. They were like, "Rosie, Rosie, where are you? Come back." and I didn't want to say a word. I was just in that tree, and all of a sudden the branch broke, and I fell to the floor, and I got hurt. But by that time they had stopped calling me. From that point onwards, I didn't want to go to his house anymore.
Mm,
I That was it for me. But um my family would ask me, my mom particularly, what's going on? What's going on? Because I got hurt and I was just laying in the house, and I said, nothing, nothing's going on. And I've carried that with me for years.
mm,
And every time I go to Fiji to visit, I that even though I had so many good memories growing up in that neighborhood, I've also had memories like PTSD from that situation.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people listening to this might think, oh, that was nothing really. I think we just need to clarify the man was laying on his back. He was putting you were sitting on top of his genitals, rocking back
Hmm.
and forth in a sexual way. You probably
Hmm.
felt stuff that you didn't want to feel as a little girl. And these incidents can impact a child so profoundly in their life because it's not normal, it's not natural to be violated in that way, to be coerced, I guess, through chocolate, manipulated. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, these stories are all too common. And this is why we want to talk about it because it impacts our young people. And then we wonder why, as adults, they end up in drugs and into pornography and all these other issues. So, were you, I
Hmm.
mean, your mother asked what was wrong that day. Were you ever able to tell her what happened or no?
No. And up till this day, she's actually here in my house. She still doesn't know about what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, she has no idea that that happened while I was growing up,
Mhm.
and I don't know what she would do if she knew that that had happened. I mean, I'm 34 now. I Right now I could stand up for myself,
Mhm.
but I don't know if she would be able to live with herself
Mhm.
to find that out.
Yeah. Yep. So, did you ever return to this man's house again?
Honestly, when I had gone to Fiji around 2016, I think, around that time, that was probably the last time that I said hello. But usually, because the lady that I was named after, I call her Mayada, my Singwa. She's my mom's real sister, so her house is beside his house. And every time I go to Fiji, that's the first stop that I make, because I usually like to tell her that I'm here. Like, it's
Mm.
customary for me.
Mm.
And unfortunately, one of those days when I went to make that stop, he was outside as well. So I said hello. It was like a bland hello. I didn't, you know, it just
Mhm.
brought up all those memories.
No, absolutely. But you'd never gone back as a young child after that.
No. Yeah.
No, you stayed away from his house. And sometimes, I guess I just want to help, particularly parents and adults, look for signs. If your child suddenly doesn't want to go to Uncle Jim's house or Pastor so and so, usually there's a reason why, quite often, and being
Mhm.
able to dig a bit deeper to find out. And maybe the child might not be able to articulate. Maybe you need to go and um, ask the adult. Even just asking
Mhm.
the question can sometimes put a bit of fear into their life because they're like, oh, they're onto us. We've got to
Mhm.
begin to dig deeper because kids just don't suddenly stop turning up and going. Things happen if they stop going to friends' houses. What's happened there is really, really important. And this is, I mean, back then, Rosie, no one really fully understood the extent of child sexual abuse, and your mother can't blame herself. But we can be a lot more wiser. So, growing up as a teenager, did you feel like this impacted, you as a young woman growing up?
Yes, it impacted me a lot. When I was growing up, as a Fijian child. your parents don't allow you to, you know, have a boyfriend until you find a job, traditionally, you know. And now in the modern Fijian family, of course you can bring your boyfriend home, or if your parents are more understanding. With my dad, um no, I couldn't have a boyfriend until I was, I had a job, I was able to bring stuff home, right? But it has definitely impacted me in so many ways, mentally, physically. um you know Probably the reason why it's hard for me to actually really settle down, because I'm afraid, to the point where I have to ask all these questions. Is this man, is the same situation going to happen to me again, even though you with your partner, right? Is this person going to, not seek consent before doing something? Even though you're together, you still have to, have some sort of consent. Because, like, what if you're drunk and then you just take your partner by surprise or whatever? Some people don't like that. But for me, it has definitely impacted me a lot, mentally. Um, I'm doing so good at work. Like, everything that I have ever wanted as a little kid, I have that. But most of the time, it affects me mentally. Like, when I'm at work, I have these days where I just don't want to be there, and I don't know why, but it just happens. Like, I just have these bad days without any explanation. Hence the reason why I go see a psychiatrist for this, because I want to know if whatever happened to me as a child is the reason why I'm going through stuff like this right now, as an adult.
Yeah, and good on you for not just ignoring all these signs and issues, but seeing a psychologist. And again, I just can't, um, endorse enough just the need for, sometimes we need more than prayer. Prayer
We
is
do.
great, but we need to be able to speak to someone, and quite often someone qualified who understands trauma and childhood sexual abuse. How has the psychologist been able to help you?
She has been very helpful in this situation. I wish I had gone to see one sooner, but I had ignored it because I didn't think it was significant for me, like, to go see a psychologist for this situation. But I had, stopped myself, like, last year, and I was thinking to myself, like, from time to time you still have these mental breakdowns. Maybe it's deeper than that. And when I have these mental breakdowns, like I said, I always think of that. And I can't believe that this has affected me. That little situation has affected me until, you know. So that's why I think it was so good to go see a psychiatrist the time I did. But I wish I had done it sooner, because
Mm.
I've gotten the help that I needed, and I'm still getting help at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd mentioned to me that you have been married previously, and you're now divorced, and you felt like this incident from your childhood has affected the way you related to men and impacted on that divorce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, yes. So I was married for about 5 years.
Mm.
Um, Mostly during that marriage, um, when little arguments, I mean, every couple argues, for whatever reason. But when these little arguments came out, I would always think about that time when Uncle Jim, like,
Mm.
had touched me or whatnot. I always thought about that. And it just made my blood, like, boil so much, to the point where it was an abusive marriage. I
Mm.
had, and yeah, we would, it went to a point where we were both swinging hands. We even both got arrested for it.
Mm.
Something I'm not proud of, but it's all because of what I went through as a child. I wouldn't say the whole marriage was because of that, but part of it contributed to the reason why I got that divorce and the reason why we were both abusive towards each other because of that. It wasn't healthy at all.
Mm.
I'm glad I got out of it, but still, the that abuse had contributed to part of that divorce.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, no. There's many factors that contribute to it, isn't there? Now, look, I'm so aware that because every time I'm in Fiji, I hear these stories similar to yours. Not everyone's got the courage to speak up about it yet, but thank you for having the courage. For the people who are listening to this, sometimes we don't actually identify that what happened was abuse until we hear someone else's story, and then we're like, oh my gosh, that happened to me.
Mhm.
For the people who are listening and identifying with what you've shared, Rosie, what would you like to encourage them with?
Um, as Fijians, we are very reserved people. And I know that because I was brought up in a very reserved family. And to speak about these things is a taboo. It's You're not allowed to speak of it, or if you try to voice it out, your your relatives, even some parents, they shut it down. They'll say, no, that's nothing. Like, stop lying. You will be shut down, and even some parents, they will think that you're lying, or all this stuff. But my advice to, like, if you have a similar situation or know of something or someone who's going through a similar situation, I would encourage you to speak up. I wasn't able to speak up because I was scared. I was a child at that time, and I thought nobody would believe me for what had happened, because this man was respected in the community. It came to a point where he became the mayor of Nandi. I will tell you that right now.
Mm.
And I know I'm not the only child who was abused by this man. I know there's a few girls who were abused as well, and I don't know the number. But if you're going through something like this, please speak up. I wish I had spoken up sooner, because I don't want anybody to go through the same situation that I went through. I know it's disheartening. It breaks you mentally, physically, emotionally, but you got to speak up. You got to help the other young girls who cannot speak for themselves. Um, I know it affects you mentally a lot, and it still does to this day. I never thought that it would affect me to this day, but it still does. And I'm still healing through it. And that's why I'm speaking up now, so that I can help the other young girls, or whoever, young boys as well. Or if you're going through this, you need to speak up and tell your story. Like, don't worry about that. I'm not saying don't worry, but um, as much as Fijians are reserved, you need to be able to help people who are going through the similar situation as you are.
Absolutely. Um, there's nothing godly about being silent in the face of evil. We all go to church and have our prayers and family devotions, but part of following Jesus is speaking up, is uncovering wickedness, evil, which is what you're doing today, Rosie. So thank you. And again, I just want to keep saying to parents, believe your children. They don't lie about these things. They don't make up their stories. Those respected men, that pastor, those politicians, unfortunately, yes, they engage in this type of activity. Power, money, and sex all go together, unfortunately, and they bring great destruction, but they get away with it because they're respected. But what they're doing is evil. And so this is why we have the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific podcast to disrupt. So thank you, Rosie. And if anyone's listening to this too and you've got a story, please contact me. And I'm also going to put a link to places in Fiji, organisations that do counselling, that offer help, because we've got to get healing. And I pray that Rosie's story will encourage you to go see somebody and to begin to speak about it. But Rosie, you have been amazing. And I know you're about to get on a plane and come to Fiji for a week or so. So that'll be lovely. But thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. May it help for so many people.
You're welcome.